FBI Director Kash Patel just lit the fuse on the biggest investigation in decades, a grand criminal conspiracy probe that reaches all the way back to Obama's intelligence chiefs. We're talking Brennan, Clapper, Comey, and the whole gang. And here's the kicker. This probe circumvents the statute of limitations. So nobody's safe and nobody's protected by time. At the same moment, questions are swirling about Biden's official acts and whether they're valid, and the timing's not a coincidence. The deep state's darkest secrets are about to be dragged into the light. What Patel uncovered will expose a decade of weaponization that makes Watergate look like jaywalking. This is the reckoning they feared would come, so keep on watching. Now, the establishment thought they could bury the truth forever. But freedom is never more than one generation from extinction. And that's why the Tuttle Twins created the most effective liberty-first content for kids. Their monthly magazine teaches children about economics, liberty, and responsibility through comics, activities, and real-world lessons. While Kash Patel exposes how the deep state corrupted our institutions, you can ensure your kids understand what real American values look like. Right now, subscribe a loved one, a granddaughter, a grandson, a niece, a nephew, your kids, for just $56 a year. It's pennies. Go to TuttleTwins.com/next. Don't let your child be indoctrinated by the same system that created this mess. Teach them to think for themselves. TuttleTwins.com/next. Or you can just scan that QR code on the screen. Hit pause, scan it, and go right there. But make sure you come back. All right. So let's continue where we are at. Hawley now demanding answers on Biden's autopen scandal, talking with Steve Bannon. Check this out.
Over this autopen situation, it's just becoming now front page news. What in the hell's going on, and what can you do about it?
Well, what needs to happen, a couple things. I mean, first of all, we need to call the person. We now have the name of the person who managed the autopen under Biden. I believe the individual is a woman. She needs to be called before Congress, put under oath, testify in public. We need to hear from her. We need to know exactly what did he authorize, when did he authorize it. I suspect the truth is, Steve, he didn't authorize anything, which would be like the scandal of the century. We need to know that. Number two, there is supposed to be a paper trail. You know, we had a hearing on this in the Senate a couple of weeks ago. To me, the big revelation out of that hearing was every time the autopen is used, there's supposed to be an explicit paper trail. The president has to, at a minimum, give verbal consent to use it, and a record is made of that. So let's get all the documents. Let's see them. They should be in Biden's archives. They ought to be in his papers. We need to go get them. If Biden's not going to release them voluntarily, Congress ought to subpoena those documents and get them and put them out in public. Where's the paper trail? Who authorized the use of the pen? That's what we need to be getting after.
Well, we know that Jeff Zients was named in the New York Times article after they interviewed Joe Biden. So that is just the tip of the iceberg. And here we have Victor David Hanson. I love this guy. It was a total indictment, Victor David Hanson obliterating the former CIA Director John Brennan as fresh investigations into his actions take a dark turn. He laid out 3 damning examples of lies and hoaxes that expose the real Brennan. Let's dive into this real quick here. Here he is laying out the case bluntly.
Department. Recently, Pam Bondi and the Trump Department of Justice has said they are running an investigation into James Comey and John Brennan's career as the respective FBI director and the CIA head during the Obama administration, and in the case of Comey, the first year of the Trump administration. They are very angry about this, but let's just review why there might be some culpability. Take John Brennan. He was a big proponent of waterboarding and enhanced interrogation under George W. Bush's administration and the things that went on in Guantanamo. I'm not going to comment on whether they were right or wrong, but he flipped to condition himself to go into the Obama administration, and then he attacked the very president that he had served, George Bush. Then he began sounding off about Islam, religion of peace, jihadism is not a violent act, to condition himself further to be appointed by Obama, which he was, eventually as CIA director. Recently...
Continuing with the thread here from Vigilant Fox, one of those lies he argued was meant to cover for Obama's drone war.
There wasn't one. But then he started lying. He always probably lied, but flagrantly so. He said before Congress and the media there wasn't one civilian killed by Obama's targeted assassination program via predators on the Afghan or Pakistan border. Actually, there were 50 or 75 innocent people we killed. He was caught in that lie. 3 years later, he went before the Congress, and there was information that he had been tapping his CIA, the staffers for the Senate, to get into their computer. He not only lied about it, he did so emphatic. We would never do that. That's horrible. Then he was forced to say, yes, I lied.
Wow.
In both cases, there were no perjury charges, nothing. But then
time for perjury charges. Keep going here. Hanson argued Brennan's pattern didn't stop there. It reached its most destructive point during the 2020 election.
The piece of resistance for John Brennan was in October 2020, on the eve of the second and critical presidential debate. Joe Biden was in trouble. People were furious about this laptop. There was pornography on it. There was drug use. There was references to Joe Biden as Mr. Big Guy, 10% that he'd been giving money. He was crooked. People wanted to hear. He had no excuse. So what happened? Anthony Blinken, his future Secretary of State, campaign aide, called Michael Morrell, interim CIA director at one point, said, round them up. So 51 quote-unquote intelligence authorities swore that the laptop had all the hallmarks of Russian information. Notice the words, all the hallmarks, escape clause, of Russian information, not disinformation. But that's what they meant. So what happened in the debate? Trump went right after Biden and said that laptop is real. It shows that you're a crook. It shows that your son is a miscreant. And Joe Biden's, how dare you? 51 intelligence authorities swear that it's a product of Russian espionage. Only you and Rudy Giuliani believe that. And it was effective. Later, a poll showed, the Technometrica poll showed that if people had known that it had been authenticated, and by the way, that laptop was sitting in the hands of the FBI and adjudicated to be authentic and not released to the public at a time when James Comey's Christopher Wray's FBI was partnering with Twitter and Facebook to suppress any news story that was accurately reporting that the laptop was authentic.
Send them all to prison. Here's more from Victor David Hanson.
John Brennan finally accused Donald Trump of being a Russian traitor. He said that after Donald Trump spoke in Helsinki about Russian-American relationships. He said that he is treasonous. When he said that, I think we all thought, well, wait a minute. Donald Trump killed the Wagner Group in Syria. He upped the sanctions on the oligarchs. He approved offensive weapons to Ukraine that Obama had canceled. Russia didn't go into Ukraine under the Trump administration. It had invaded Ossetia under Bush. It went under Ukraine under both Biden and Obama, but not under Trump. He told the Germans, don't cut a deal with Putin on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. He got out of an asymmetrical missile deal. He was the hardest president that we've had against Russia. John Brennan finally...
So here's more. His final argument was merciless against the former CIA director.
Significant scandals. So what was John Brennan doing? Here's what he was doing. In 2 or 3 of the most significant scandals of the last 50 years, he was at the center. You could make the argument that the Russian collusion hoax almost swung the election to Hillary Clinton. You could argue that. You could argue that the Mueller investigation, based on that stupid dossier, cost Donald Trump 22 months of his first 2 years in office, $40 million to find nothing. You could make the argument that if the FBI had have just released its investigation of the laptop, told the people it was authentic, John Brennan would not and his cohorts been able to lie to the American people that it was cooked up in Russia and that Donald Trump was complicit in that. That disclosure, that failure to disclose the true nature of that laptop, thanks to John Brennan and 51 intelligence authorities, and the debate by Joe Biden, and the false charges, may have affected the election. As I said, one polling company found that it did. And finally, we wouldn't be in this big trouble about the Ukraine war and Russia had John Brennan and people like him not floated this spurious narrative that Donald Trump was working hand in glove with Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin, Russia, Russia, Russia. That colored and poisoned the whole relationship we had with Russia. It affected the Russian-Ukrainian war, and it was all a lie. And so here we are with John Brennan mad that he lost his security clearance for being a well-paid MSNBC analyst. He should be better worried, not that he lost his security clearance, that he might be indicted and go to jail. He's got a lot of culpability, both in not telling the truth and spinning lies and being at the heart of a number of scandals that affected the history of the United States. So what was...
Oh, yeah, baby. Let's go. I am all for it. Here we have 24 hours ago, the FBI under Director Kash Patel has opened a grand conspiracy probe into a decade of DOJ intel weaponization, including Clinton's email scandal, Russiagate, 2020 election meddling. This opens the door to special prosecutor and criminal charges. Boom. FBI grand conspiracy probe on weaponization has begun. Okay, now that was from Just the News. John Solomon is the author of that. Here's John Solomon talking with Steve Bannon about the grand conspiracy case.
So, John, we broke you broke on our show on Friday, the extended version, this situation about the FBI looking at going after the deep state on a host of things, going back to the beginning, a crossfire hurricane before Trump was president, going into the nullification project and the Russia hoax, including the impeachment and the perfect phone call, doing maybe potentially the 2020 election, the J6, a whole raft of things. You've got additional reporting. Can you get us up to speed on this? And are we close? How much effort did the FBI have to put into this investigation before we actually announce a special counsel, sir?
Yeah, listen, I think there's enough evidence already there that they could name a special counsel as early this week. It's really just up to Pam Bondi. This is an opportunity for her to change the subject from Epstein to something that is perhaps more consequential to the American people long term. And they can clean up Epstein with someone else, perhaps. Secondly, their evidence is all laying out in public view except for two highly classified pieces of intelligence. One is in the Inspector General report on Hillary Clinton's email that reveals that the United States intelligence community got new evidence of possible criminality in the Hillary Clinton email scandal, but did not pursue it just before James Comey cleared her of all criminal wrongdoing. That has stayed secret for 8 years. Chuck Grassley, the Senate Judiciary Committee chairman, has been relentlessly pursuing it. He has President Trump's ear. I think that's going to get declassified in the next few days. That will show that there was reason to pursue Hillary Clinton, not clear her, and not pursue Donald Trump. They should have not ever investigated him for Russia collusion. The second piece of classified evidence that could be released is referred to by John Durham as the Clinton Plan intelligence. It's an intercept 5 days before the FBI opened up on Crossfire Hurricane that Hillary Clinton was about to concoct a Russian scandal and try to pretend that Vladimir Putin was helping Donald Trump win the election. That means that the CIA, the FBI, and President Obama himself personally was aware that what Hillary Clinton was doing was a ruse, a political dirty trick, and still James Comey's FBI opened up on the information. If those two pieces of evidence get declassified so grand jurors can see it, Pam Bondi names a special prosecutor, we could be rolling by the end of this week.
End of this week. Part of this, because you had Durham, you had all this, you reported extensively. Part of this is not going to be just what they tried to do to President Trump. But isn't a big part of this also going to be the cover-up? Because you had Durham, you had people, but it looks like obviously now information was specifically buried. Either people lied, perjured themselves, or buried information. Because this stuff should have come out. I mean, this is the whole purpose of Durham and these other things. This should have come out, and even these House investigations, this should have come out years ago, correct?
Yeah, listen, look at the China interference in the 2020 election. That allegation, that was buried until just a few weeks ago. Remember, Kash Patel said when he got in there, he found this room full of documents that were never released to Congress, mostly on Russiagate. That is a whole new tranche. So the cover-up, as it often is, can be a big part of the scandal, and it could be a part of the ongoing conspiracy as the FBI looks at this. They're looking at it as one grand conspiracy, that a constant pattern of clearing Democrats of criminal wrongdoing in the face of criminal wrongdoing.
Hey, John.
Holy cow, man. Next week, special prosecutor. Wait a minute. Who was just called up? Where are the whispers about a special prosecutor? Matt Gaetz? Could he be coming in to special prosecute this and not the Epstein case? Holy cow. The pieces of the puzzle are coming together. Here we have more Kash Patel launching grand criminal conspiracy probe targeting Obama. Brennan, Clapper, Comey, targeting the decades-long weaponization of the federal government. New report, Department of Justice might appoint special prosecutor for possible criminal grand conspiracy case. Oh, man. Obama, Clapper, Brennan, Comey, they are all shitting their pants right now. Oh, we've got more. Oh, John Solomon went on with Fox News. Holy cow. With James Comey even. Let's listen. Get your popcorn.
Conspiracy, but what I'm reading in your piece tells me that starting with Russia and the Russia hoax, all the way through Jack Smith, we're talking about every incident of weaponization used against Donald Trump and how it could be part of a broader, grander conspiracy theory, a conspiracy that actually took place and law-breaking involved in it. And that also the statute of limitations would not be applicable in this case as a result. And this would include names like Comey and Clapper and Brennan. Take it from there.
Yeah, and
come on, don't leave out Obama.
Obama too, because he was in on these early meetings. So what the FBI has,
and that also the statute of limitations would not be applicable in this case as a result. And this would include names like Comey and Clapper and Brennan. Take it from there.
Yeah, and Barack Obama, too, because he was in on these early meetings. So what the FBI has done is treated the last decade of weaponization, all the great work that James Comey has turned up through his oversight committee, and put it into a timetable and said, this looks like an ongoing conspiracy, a wash, rinse, repeat cycle of Democrat gets in legal trouble. Hillary Clinton in her email case, Hunter Biden with his taxes, Joe Biden with his classified documents. They're let off the hook even when there is extraordinary evidence suggesting they shouldn't be left off the hook. And then a parallel track occurs where the Republican, in this case Donald Trump, is investigated falsely for things like Russia collusion, Ukrainian interference, his own documents at his home in Mar-a-Lago. This is a criminal conspiracy. By treating it as a conspiracy, you eliminate the 5-year statutes on individual crimes. If something happened in 2016, but it was part of an ongoing conspiracy that continued with Jack Smith raiding Donald Trump's home at Mar-a-Lago, it can be charged in the larger conspiracy, even though if you tried to charge it in an individual case, you wouldn't get it. Furthermore, you could also change the venue. Remember the troubles John Durham had bringing prosecutions to Washington, D.C.? Jurors wouldn't convict, even if they thought there was criminality going on. In this case, you could pick a place like Florida, where Jack Smith did the raid on Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago house, and say that's where we're putting the grand jury. You get a more fair jury pool, a more fair grand jury pool. It gives Pam Bondi, Attorney General, an enormous amount of flexibility to do something historic. Finally bring some accountability for all the things that Chairman Comer and Chairman Johnson, Chairman Grassley, Chairman Jordan have brought and proved to the American people.
Well, hell, that would save a lot of face for Pam Bondi, wouldn't you say? I mean, can we walk and chew gum at the same time, Pam? All right, let's see. Well, she is a blonde. So, anyway, let's hear what James Comey had to say.
I think it would be a hard pitch in front of a court of law to try to defend what Joe Biden just admitted to the New York Times, that he didn't know exactly who all was getting pardons or not. He didn't know who was being pardoned with the use of his autopen. And that's the whole basis of this investigation. This is just the pardons. What about the executive orders? I mean, there was no process that we have found thus far, and we've brought in 4 people thus far in our interviews and depositions, no defined process by which Joe Biden was the one saying, yes, use this autopen to sign my name on this pardon or this executive order. I mean, Sean, we're just talking about signing your name, one signature. So it doesn't even take into account whether or not he was mentally able to understand what he was even signing. So this is bad, and I think this puts all of those pardons in peril from the Biden administration.
Yeah, baby. It certainly does. The grand conspiracy investigation has begun. If you got value from this report, hit subscribe. My final thought is next. This investigation changes everything. When Kash Patel opens a grand criminal conspiracy probe that bypasses the statute of limitations, he's sending a message. Nobody escapes justice. Not Brennan, who Victor David Hanson just destroyed with 3 documented lies. Not Clapper, who lied to Congress about surveillance. Not Comey, who leaked classified memos. Not even Obama, if the evidence leads there. The Mar-a-Lago raid that Jack Smith orchestrated, well, that just gave Patel jurisdiction to move it to Florida for a fair trial. Meanwhile, serious questions about Biden's presidency are emerging that could invalidate major decisions. This is the deep state's nightmare scenario, a real investigation with teeth. So here's the question. Should Obama administration officials face prosecution for weaponizing intelligence agencies? Yes or no? That's all I want to hear. Yes or no? Sound off below. So the cover-up that lasted a decade. It lasted a decade, but the truth finally breaking free. Grab your merch at the link and show where you stand, because justice delayed isn't justice denied anymore. We got Alligator Alcatraz, President Autopen, Mega Avengers, and you can pick your favorite member of the administration in our American Badass collection. Check it out. Trigger a Liberal today at shop.nextnewsnetwork.com.